You ever notice how people walk around pretending they already know everything, smiling like they've got life all figured out, as if the world handed them a secret manual the rest of us never got? They cling to their routines, their little explanations, their tidy answers, because the truth, the real truth, scares them more than anything. So they bury it under noise, distractions, fake confidence. They convince themselves that not knowing is safer, but sooner or later, something cracks. A moment comes when the lights flicker just enough, when the mask slips just a little, and you see it, the confusion, the fear, the silent question they've been trying to outrun. And that's when it hits you. They never knew the truth. Not about the world, not about themselves, not about why their heart beats the way it does when everything goes wrong. People love to pretend they see everything, like their eyes are mirrors of reality, reflecting back the world exactly as it is. But most of the time, those eyes are nothing more than filters, colored by fear, habit, pride, and distraction. They stare at the world, thinking they know it, thinking they understand, while the truth sits there quietly, unbothered, waiting in plain sight, waiting for someone who dares to look past the smoke and mirrors, past the stories everyone else tells themselves to keep from feeling too much, past the masks that society and circumstance press against their faces every single day. It's funny how obvious things can be, and yet so invisible. People walk past truths every day and never notice them. They pass by them with a shrug or a yawn, convinced they're too complex to understand, convinced that life doesn't hand out answers, convinced that the world's secrets are buried somewhere out of reach. And all the while, the truth isn't hiding in some far-off vault, behind locked doors or coded messages. No, the truth has been sitting there, under their noses, resting quietly, laughing at the blindness they've cultivated, whispering softly. You think you're safe in your ignorance. You see, humans have a strange talent for distraction. They pile so much noise into their lives, things to buy, things to chase, things to prove, things to avoid, that the real signals get drowned out. The truth doesn't scream. The truth doesn't demand attention. It doesn't hit you over the head. It waits for the moment when you're still enough, quiet enough, honest enough with yourself to notice it. But until that moment, it blends into the background, disguised as ordinary life. And the irony is, that's exactly what makes it dangerous. People fear the unknown, but they rarely realize they are blind to the known. And here's the cruel twist. Once you see it, once the veil lifts, you realize just how long it's been there, how it was shaping everything around you, and you feel both stupid and awake at the same time. You wonder how you missed it, how you could have walked through your days without noticing the obvious, how you could have built your life on assumptions that had been quietly untrue all along. That's the beauty of it. That's the chaos it brings. The truth doesn't just reveal itself, it forces you to confront every lie you've tolerated, every story you've believed, every small comfort you've used to stay blind, and people don't like that part. They don't like realizing that the foundation they've been standing on is built from illusions. They don't like realizing that they've been negotiating with shadows while pretending they were dealing with substance. The truth makes them uncomfortable because it's not polite, it's not convenient, and it doesn't wait for them to be ready. It doesn't care if you've been ignoring it for years. It doesn't care if you've been comforting yourself with fantasies. It doesn't care if you've been blind. It simply exists, and the longer you avoid it, the more violently it begins to demand recognition. Most people fear that moment of clarity because they know it changes everything. Seeing the truth isn't about decoration or validation or reassurance. It's about confrontation. It's about standing face to face with something that has been guiding your life without your consent, and realizing you've been participating in its illusions. That's when the questions start to appear. The ones you didn't know you were asking, the ones you've been avoiding, the ones that demand answers whether you're ready or not. And in that confrontation, a strange exhilaration begins to rise, because once you see the truth, there's no pretending anymore, no hiding, no comforting lies to shield you from your own awareness. And it's not just about understanding the world. No, the truth doesn't stop there. It reaches into you. It touches the corners of your mind you've been avoiding. It scratches at the walls of your self-deception. It forces you to consider the parts of yourself you've ignored, the patterns you've tolerated, the compromises you've made. Suddenly, the blind spots in your own life become glaring, unavoidable. The truth exposes them not with malice, but with precision, like a scalpel carving away the illusions that comforted you for so long. And you realize you've been both the victim and the accomplice in your own deception. And here's the most unsettling part. Once you've noticed it, you can't unsee it. Once you've felt it, you can't ignore it. It colors every thought, every choice, every glance you give to the world from that moment on. You start noticing the cracks in people's facades, the hidden agendas behind smiles, the quiet manipulations behind kindness, the subtle patterns that have always been there. You notice the ways life nudges you in directions you didn't realize, the ways people influence you, the ways your own mind deceives you. And every revelation, every recognition, every tiny spark of clarity fuels a kind of dangerous awareness. And awareness, that's the gift. That's the chaos. That's the punchline in the cosmic joke no one warns you about. The truth is rarely comforting. The truth rarely waits for timing. The truth doesn't care about your excuses, your fears, your pride. But when you finally see it, when you finally meet it eye to eye, when you finally accept that it was there all along, something inside you shifts. Something inside you becomes sharper, faster, more awake. Something inside you starts seeing the patterns, connecting the dots, waking up to the rhythm that has been pulsing under your skin the entire time. And that's why the truth is so dangerous and so beautiful. Because it doesn't just inform you, it transforms you. It shakes the foundations of everything you thought you knew and dares you to stand taller than you ever imagined. It's been hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to act, waiting for you to stop pretending. And now that moment has arrived. People have an extraordinary ability to lie to themselves. They wrap themselves in layers of comfort, in habits that feel safe, in explanations that make the world seem reasonable. And while they're wrapped in these illusions, they can smile, nod, and pretend they understand. But the truth is hiding in plain sight, and they can't see it because comfort has blinded them. Comfort doesn't just cushion life, it sedates the mind. It teaches you to accept less, to look away, to keep walking past the cracks while pretending the floor beneath your feet is solid. Denial works the same way. Denial is like a polite shadow that follows you everywhere. It whispers in your ear, telling you that the uncomfortable questions don't matter, that the inconvenient truths are irrelevant, that if you close your eyes and nod, everything will be fine. And people listen. Oh, how they listen. They build their lives around denial, arranging the pieces of reality like puzzle pieces that never quite fit, telling themselves the picture is complete, but it's not. The picture is broken, and the brokenness is what they refuse to see. When you combine comfort with denial, you get a perfect recipe for blindness. People think they're awake, but they're not. They think they're aware, but they're not. They think they're making choices, but the choices are being made by fear disguised as safety, by avoidance disguised as wisdom, by lies disguised as hope. Comfort lets you drift. Denial lets you float. Together, they make you feel untouchable. But untouchable is just another word for unaware. Untouchable is just another word for weak. And the cruel thing is, the moment life forces the mask off, the shock is unbearable. Most people are terrified of that moment, the one when comfort and denial no longer work. They panic when the rug is pulled out from under them because it forces them to see what they've been avoiding. It forces them to meet the truth. It forces them to look at the world clearly for the first time. And in that clarity, they realize how long they've been blind, how many opportunities they've ignored, how many lies they've swallowed whole because they were easier to accept than reality. That's the price of comfort. That's the cost of denial. And most people pay it without ever knowing. And it's not just the world outside that they miss. The lies reach inside too. Comfort makes them think they're enough. Denial makes them think they're safe. Together, they make them believe they're in control. But the real truth is that the mind becomes a cage when it's too used to ease. The real danger is never external, it's internal. The truth is relentless. And one day it comes knocking, demanding acknowledgement. And the very same people who thought they were untouchable realize that the cage has been built by their own hands. There's a perversity in it. People guard their comfort like treasure, and yet the very thing they cling to is the thing that ensures their suffering later. They will do anything to avoid seeing what is real, anything to keep the illusion alive, anything to ignore the whispers that tell them life is not as simple as they hoped. And all the while, the cracks widen. All the while, the consequences grow sharper. And one day, the shock comes, sudden and inescapable, and it rips through the cocoon that comfort and denial have woven around them. People often mistake denial for peace. They think that as long as they ignore it, it isn't real. They believe that as long as their lives follow a comfortable rhythm, the world is fair, the people they love are honest, the path ahead is clear. But reality doesn't negotiate with denial. Reality doesn't pause for comfort. Reality doesn't care if you've been blind. And that is the lesson most people never learn until it hits them hard. It doesn't arrive slowly. It doesn't give warnings. It demolishes the illusions all at once, leaving nothing to hide behind, and the chaos is necessary. That's the cruel joke, isn't it? The world doesn't destroy illusions to punish you, it destroys them to wake you up. It tears down comfort and shatters denial to expose what you've been refusing to see. Only in the absence of soft distractions, in the vacuum left by illusions, does clarity emerge. Only then can people start to recognize patterns they've ignored, truths they've denied, motivations they've hidden from themselves. Only then can they see life without the blinders that comfort and denial imposed. And it's never easy. Seeing through comfort is painful. Breaking through denial is terrifying. It forces you to confront everything you've taken for granted, the mistakes you've ignored, the lies you've tolerated, the fears you've avoided. But that's the point. Comfort and denial are luxuries you can't afford if you want to survive. If you want to rise. If you want to be awake. The moment they collapse, the moment life removes the veil, you see yourself raw and unprotected. And it's in that vulnerability that power begins to grow. People don't understand that blindness isn't just about the world, it's about themselves. Comfort and denial aren't just shields, they're prisons. They teach you to stay small, to stay obedient, to accept half-truths as complete. They prevent you from testing your limits, from noticing your potential, from stepping into the fire that forges real strength. And when the walls crumble, the cage opens. And you finally meet the part of you that has been waiting all along, the part that can see, the part that can fight, the part that can rise because it finally recognizes the lies and refuses to be bound by them. Once you see it, once the mask drops, there's no turning back. You can't unsee the ways comfort and denial have kept you blind. You can't unlearn how easy it was to deceive yourself. But there's a gift in it too, the gift of awakening, the gift of clarity, the gift of finally facing life with eyes that can pierce illusions, with a mind that can navigate chaos, with a heart that knows fear but refuses to be controlled by it. Because when you stop hiding behind comfort, when you stop believing in denial, you start living, you start seeing, you start becoming something larger than the small, blind, comfortable person you used to be. Reality doesn't care if you're ready for it. Reality doesn't knock politely and wait while you prepare a speech, a plan, a list of excuses. Reality barges in, unannounced, uninvited, and it has a way of ripping the mask off every lie you've been telling yourself. And most people panic when it does. They flail, they scream, they scramble for comfort, because comfort has been their safe space, their warm blanket, their illusion of control. But here's the secret: reality doesn't come to punish you. It comes to wake you up, to shake you out of the comfortable fog that's been lulling you into a life half-lived, into a version of yourself that never had to try, that never had to risk, that never had to burn to find the light. And the part of you that's been waiting, oh, it's patient, it's cunning. It knows when the walls of denial are too strong, too polite, too soft to be breached. It waits for chaos, for confrontation, for a moment that forces you to stop running from yourself. And when reality finally drops its hand on your shoulder and whispers, or sometimes screams, "Look at this," that part awakens. It stretches in the dark corners of your mind, like a creature that has been coiled too long, like a spark lying dormant in wet tinder, waiting for the friction of truth to ignite it. Most people never meet that part of themselves because they're afraid. They're terrified of the heat, of the exposure, of the discomfort. They would rather live in the quiet hum of illusion, in the pale comfort of half-truths, in the safety of pretending they have it all figured out. But the thing about pretending is that it's exhausting. Every smile, every nod, every self-assured glance in the mirror is a performance, a flimsy costume stitched together with hope and ignorance. And one day, reality tears that costume off, and you can either crumble under the nakedness or awaken to the fire that's been waiting to burn bright inside you. Facing reality is violent in its own way. It doesn't gently prod you to notice the cracks. It slams them into your face. It forces you to reckon with the things you've ignored, the opportunities you let slip, the lies you swallowed, the people who deceived you, the choices you avoided, the courage you never summoned. And that part of you, the one that's been waiting, it doesn't flinch, it doesn't apologize, it doesn't waver. It grows stronger with every tremor, every panic, every shiver that runs down your spine as you finally see the world, yourself, and your life clearly for the first time. And here's the irony: people think they're prepared for reality, that they can handle the truth, that they know themselves. But reality doesn't care about their confidence, their routines, their careful planning. Reality cares only about exposure. It cares only about confrontation. And when the exposure comes, the confrontation arrives. That waiting part of you rises like a tide you never knew existed. It sweeps away hesitation, dissolves fear, and forces you to act, to respond, to become more than you thought possible, more than you ever allowed yourself to imagine. People underestimate the power of awakening. They think it's a gentle nudge, a polite suggestion. But the awakening that comes from facing reality is a hurricane. It tears down everything you built to feel safe, everything you built to feel certain, everything you built to keep the discomfort at bay. It rips through the soft walls of denial and comfort, exposes the weak foundations of your beliefs. And in that chaos, in that raw exposure, that part of you finally rises. It sharpens your mind, fuels your instincts, ignites your ambition, and demands action in a world that never waits. And once it rises, it's relentless. That part of you doesn't care about excuses, about doubts, about hesitation. It doesn't negotiate with fear. It doesn't plead for comfort. It moves. It calculates. It strikes. It takes the clarity reality has forced upon you and bends it into power. Suddenly, the things that used to terrify you, the uncertainties that used to paralyze you, the risks that used to scare you, they all become tools, weapons, fuel. The awakening turns chaos into strategy, panic into precision, fear into motion, and suddenly you're seeing patterns, connections, possibilities you never noticed before, opportunities you never dared touch, strengths you never knew were yours. And here's the beauty this part of you has. Been waiting for the right moment, for the perfect storm, for the exact pressure that will awaken it fully. It's patient, it's cunning, it knows that soft living and polite thinking will never bring it out. It requires the friction of life, the collision with reality, the push against your own limits. And when that friction comes, it explodes. It reshapes you from the inside out. It forces you to question everything you accepted, everything you avoided, everything you feared. It makes you see the illusions for what they were and your own potential for what it can be. Most people recoil from this moment. They cry, they run, they look back at the comfort they've left behind and wish they could crawl back into it. But you, when that part of you awakens, you don't crawl back. You don't look for excuses. You don't wait for the world to be gentle. You step forward into the chaos because now you know that hesitation and comfort were never your allies. Fear and doubt were never your enemies. The awakening part of you, the part that rises when reality hits, recognizes opportunity and exposure, strength in vulnerability, and freedom in clarity. And once it's awake, once it's moving, there's no stopping it. It transforms how you see life, how you think, how you act. The waiting part of you finally has the reins, and suddenly the world isn't a place to endure, it's a place to conquer. A place where every truth revealed, every challenge faced, every uncomfortable moment becomes a weapon, a lever, a stepping stone. That part of you that has been waiting doesn't just survive reality. It thrives in it. It dances in the cracks. It thrives in the chaos. And it reminds you that the only reason you've been blind for so long was because the awakening hadn't yet demanded to be seen. People have a strange obsession with comfort. They talk about wisdom like it's a gift, a reward, a blessing. But the truth is, most people avoid it. Ignorance is easy. Ignorance doesn't ask questions. Ignorance doesn't weigh on your conscience. Ignorance doesn't force you to face yourself or the world you've been avoiding. You can sit in your little bubble, nod at the patterns everyone else accepts, and pat yourself on the back for being safe or smart. And while you're doing that, life is laughing at you. Life is moving around you. Life is feeding you little illusions, while the real answers hide in plain sight, waiting for someone brave enough to look. Knowledge is different. Knowledge demands attention. Knowledge demands confrontation. Knowledge demands courage. It doesn't sit quietly in a corner waiting for you to pick it up. It bites. It scratches. It refuses to let go until you're forced to reckon with it. You have to step into discomfort. You have to step into uncertainty. You have to risk being wrong, humiliated, exposed. Knowledge isn't polite. Knowledge isn't convenient. Knowledge doesn't care about your feelings. It only cares about what you're willing to see. And most people aren't willing to see. Most people are terrified of knowledge because it changes things. It tears apart the neat little stories they've been telling themselves, the comfortable narratives they've constructed to explain why life is fair, why people are predictable, why they're safe. Knowledge laughs at their little scripts. Knowledge pulls back the curtain and shows the machinery, the chaos, the hidden motives, the truths they were too lazy to notice. And suddenly, their world is not a story they can control, but a storm they have to navigate, a puzzle they have to solve, a challenge they have to endure. Ignorance, by contrast, is a sedative. It tells you that the world is fine, that people are good, that life is fair. It lets you nod, lets you sleep, lets you feel comfortable, while reality is slowly eroding the foundations beneath your feet. Ignorance is a sweet poison because it requires nothing. It doesn't ask you to risk anything. It doesn't demand that you question yourself, that you question others, that you face the ugly, messy, terrifying truths hiding in the shadows of your life. Ignorance protects you from truth by locking you in a cage, and you never even notice the bars until the cage starts shaking. And when the cage starts shaking, the same people who embraced ignorance suddenly find themselves trembling. They realize that being ignorant was safe, yes, but it left them unprepared. They realize that comfort came at a cost. They realize that by avoiding knowledge, by refusing to see the world clearly, they've left themselves vulnerable, weak, and blind. And in that moment, the courage required for knowledge is exposed for what it is, not polite, not optional, not easy, but necessary. Without courage, knowledge is a weapon that turns on you. With courage, knowledge is a tool that cuts through the illusions and lights the path forward. The irony is delicious. People fear knowledge because it demands bravery. Yet the very thing that keeps them safe in ignorance is the same thing that will destroy them when reality decides to knock. Knowledge isn't something that whispers gently. It doesn't hand you secrets in small doses. It confronts you with contradiction, with complexity, with consequences. And if you run, if you close your eyes, if you choose ignorance, life keeps moving, keeps shifting, keeps plotting behind the veil of convenience. The only difference is that eventually ignorance fails, and then courage is no longer a choice, it's a necessity. And courage is strange, isn't it? It doesn't roar, it doesn't boast, it doesn't announce itself like some grand hero. Courage is subtle. It's the quiet voice that says, "Look." It's the trembling hand that reaches for the truth anyway. It's the mind that refuses to let comfortable lies dictate reality. It's the heart that steps into uncertainty, even when it's terrified. Knowledge requires this courage, because truth is rarely safe. Truth is rarely easy. Truth doesn't care how long you've been comfortable. Truth doesn't care how many excuses you've built. Truth only cares if you're willing to see, willing to feel, willing to act. Most people avoid this. Most people nod, smile, and choose ignorance over clarity, comfort over confrontation. They pretend the world is as it seems. They pretend that the stories they tell themselves are accurate, and for a time, it works. For a time, they can sit in blissful unawareness, laughing at the people who question, who observe, who awaken. But the time never lasts. The walls of ignorance crack, the illusions crumble, and suddenly the brave, the observant, the willing are the ones who survive, who understand, who thrive. Because knowledge, once embraced, changes everything. It rewires how you see life, how you interact with people, how you understand your own mind. It forces honesty where there was comfort. It forces action where there was hesitation. It forces recognition where there was denial. And the courage required isn't just the courage to learn, it's the courage to live with what you learn, to act on what you see, to face the chaos with eyes wide open instead of hiding behind safety. Ignorance is easy. Knowledge demands courage. One lulls you into sleep. The other shakes you awake. One keeps you small. The other forces you to rise. One lets you pretend you're safe. The other shows you where you really are, what you really are, and what you can become if you dare to face it. And the choice is yours, though the world doesn't wait for it, and the moment passes only once, and the consequences of ignoring it don't forgive, don't forget, don't stop, because in the end, ignorance is a cage, and courage is the key, and knowledge is the door that swings open into a world you've never seen, into a life you've never lived, into the person you've been. Waiting to become revelation doesn't ask politely. It doesn't knock. It doesn't whisper. It doesn't wait for your approval. It strikes. Sometimes it comes as a whisper, a flicker, a small detail you never noticed until it hits your mind like lightning. Other times it comes crashing through the walls you've built around yourself, demolishing comfort, shattering denial, and dragging you, kicking and screaming, into clarity. And when that moment arrives, people are never ready. They think they are, but they're not. They are still holding on to habits, routines, half-truths, illusions. And suddenly, boom, the world shifts beneath their feet, and they realize everything they counted on was just a story. Most people spend their lives pretending they understand, pretending they see, pretending that life fits neatly into their careful little boxes. They ignore the subtle signs, the inconvenient coincidences, the whispers in the night, the things that don't quite fit into their neat narrative. They reassure themselves. It's fine. It's nothing. It's not important. And life lets them live like that for a while, letting the illusion grow thicker, letting them get used to the fiction. And then one day, without warning, revelation appears, and the illusion collapses instantly. One moment the world is predictable, and the next it is unrecognizable. The moment of revelation is violent in a beautiful way. It tears the veil off the comfortable lies you've been telling yourself, exposing everything you ignored, everything you avoided, everything you pretended not to notice. It forces your eyes open, whether you want them open or not, and suddenly the truths that were always there, hiding in plain sight, become undeniable. You realize the patterns, the manipulations, the consequences of choices you didn't even know you were making. And the people around you, the situations you've taken for granted, the life you thought was yours, they all look different. Nothing feels safe. Nothing feels familiar. But that's the point. People fear revelation because it destabilizes them. It strips away certainty, shatters complacency, and forces them to confront reality in its rawest form. It doesn't care if you're scared. It doesn't care if you're fragile. It doesn't care if you've spent your whole life hiding behind excuses. Revelation is merciless, but it's honest, and that honesty is what makes it transformative. It forces growth. It forces action. It forces you to see things you could never see before because your mind, comfortable in ignorance, never allowed it. And here's the cruel irony before revelation. Life feels manageable, safe, controllable, but it's a lie. That sense of control is an illusion, a fragile castle built on shifting sand. Revelation demolishes that castle in a second, and in the rubble, you find yourself exposed, naked in a way that terrifies you, but also awakens something inside you didn't know existed. It's the part of you that's been waiting for a challenge, for the chaos that forces courage, for the truth that forces clarity. It's raw, it's powerful, it's relentless, and it refuses to let you ignore it any longer. 10 years, a decade of silence, of footsteps fading into the noise, of names whispered and forgotten. Someone has been searching for you for 10 years. Think about that. 10 winters, 10 summers, 10 birthdays that came and went while someone, somewhere, kept your name alive in the dark. They looked in places you've never been, chased shadows that looked like you, followed echoes that sounded like your voice. 10 years, that's a long time to keep looking for someone, isn't it? Most people can't even hold on to a dream for a week. They lose interest, get distracted, move on. But someone out there didn't. Someone has been searching for you endlessly for a decade, refusing to forget, refusing to stop, refusing to let the world convince them you were gone. 10 years of chasing ghosts, 10 years of whispers, 10 years of staring into the unknown and hoping it might stare back. What kind of person does that? What kind of hunger burns that long without burning out? They've built their life around the hunt. Maybe they wake up every morning thinking, asterisk, maybe today, asterisk. Maybe they don't even recognize who they are without the chase. 10 years, 3,650 days of retracing steps, questioning strangers, following half-truths, hoping one of them might lead to you. They've seen faces that almost looked like yours, heard voices that almost sounded familiar. Every time, almost. Every time, not quite. But they never stopped, because the idea of finding you meant more than peace, more than closure. It meant purpose. You see, people don't chase others for that long just because of love or guilt or nostalgia. No. Something deeper keeps them going, something that eats at them. Maybe it's regret. Maybe it's the need to fix something broken. Maybe it's the haunting thought that they could have done more, said something different, made another choice. Whatever it is, it's kept them alive all these years, alive in a way most people aren't. Because obsession, when it's fed for that long, becomes oxygen. It becomes the rhythm of their heartbeat, the reason they wake, the meaning behind every step they take. They've probably forgotten what normal life feels like. Birthdays, dinners, small talk. It all fades into the background when your mind is trapped in a loop that never ends. While the world moved forward, they stayed stuck in a single moment. The moment you disappeared, the moment everything froze, the moment time started counting differently. For you, the years may have passed like chapters. For them, it's been one long, unbroken page, a sentence that never ends. They've changed, of course. Everyone does, but not in the way you think. Time doesn't just age people, it distorts them. It reshapes the face, the voice, the soul. Maybe they started this search with hope. Maybe they smiled when they talked about you. Maybe they believed the world would help them. But years of silence, years of empty roads and dead ends, they wear a person down. Hope turns to fixation. Smiles fade into grim determination. And by the time 10 years pass, they're not the same person who began the search. They've become part of it. The hunter and the hunt, blurred together, indistinguishable. You might not even recognize them anymore. The one who's been searching for you isn't the one you left behind. They've changed in ways you never imagined. They've lived inside that search so long that finding you isn't even about you anymore. It's about them. It's about proving that all those years meant something, that the pain had a point, that the sleepless nights weren't for nothing. Because if they don't find you, what does that say about the life they've been living all this time? What does that make the last 10 years worth? They've followed clues that weren't clues, believed stories that weren't true, trusted strangers who lied to their face. They've chased ghosts, reflections, silhouettes that vanished the second they reached out. But they kept moving, always moving, because stopping would mean facing the silence, the emptiness, the possibility that maybe you don't want to be found. And that thought, that's the one thing they could never face. 10 years of searching does something to the mind. It blurs the line between reality and memory. Maybe they don't even remember who you really are anymore. Maybe the person they're searching for isn't you, it's the version of you they remember, the version frozen in time, untouched by age or change. They're not looking for times you times now. They're looking for the idea of you, the person they built inside their head, the one who never left, never changed, never grew away. And that version is perfect, because it's safe, because it can't reject them, because it belongs entirely to them. But here's the strange thing. The longer they searched, the closer they got to something real, even if they didn't find you. Searching for someone that long forces you to learn things about yourself, forces you to confront truths you'd rather not see. The search becomes a mirror, reflecting everything you are, everything you've lost, everything you've been running from. 10 years of searching for someone else. And in the process, they might have found themselves piece by piece through every failure, every discovery, every haunting reminder of why they started in the first place. Maybe you were gone because you had to be. Maybe you left to survive, to rebuild, to disappear. Maybe you didn't want to be found, but they didn't care. They couldn't, because something in them refused to believe that disappearance meant the end. People like that, they don't accept endings, they rewrite them. They chase them until they make sense. And even if they never find you, even if the search leads them nowhere, they'll keep walking, because the act of searching is all that's left of who they are. 10 years of searching, and you never knew. 10 years of obsession, and you never felt the echo. But somewhere out there, someone is still looking through time, through loss, through silence, still believing that the world can't be finished until they see your face again. 10 years. 10 long, heavy, relentless years of holding on to the one thing that never left them, your name. Time is a funny thing, isn't it? It doesn't erase people. It just buries them under layers of noise, dust, and distraction. Faces fade, voices blur, memories twist themselves into strange shapes, but they never really disappear. Time hides people, hides the pain, hides the truth, but it never erases them. Somewhere beneath all that forgetting, they're still there, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be seen again. It's almost cruel, the way time works. It gives you just enough to move on, but not enough to forget. You think you've let someone go. You think you've moved forward, grown, healed. You look in the mirror and convince yourself the past doesn't matter anymore. But time laughs quietly behind you because it knows that every second that passes doesn't delete what was. It simply hides it better. You can't erase a person who changed you. You can't erase the moments that burned their shape into your story. They become ghosts, not the kind that haunt houses, but the kind that haunt quiet moments. It happens when you hear a song you haven't listened to in years, and suddenly you remember their laugh. It happens when you catch a scent that pulls you backward, when a stranger's voice sounds too familiar, when the weather feels the same as it did that one day you swore you'd never forget. That's how time plays with you. It lets you think you've escaped, then slips a reminder through the cracks just to see your reaction. You see, forgetting isn't real. It's a trick, a disguise, a temporary silence. Time buries people, but the ground is thin, and when something shakes it, even slightly, everything buried starts to rise again. The faces, the words, the mistakes, the moments they come crawling back, not to punish you, but to remind you that the story isn't as finished as you thought. You don't erase people by waiting long enough. You just make the remembering more surprising when it finally happens. Some people hide deeper than others. They learn how to blend into the noise, how to vanish in plain sight. They leave behind no messages, no signs, just absence. And you think, maybe that's it. Maybe they're gone forever. But time doesn't let people vanish that easily. It loops back around over and over, and somehow their shadow finds its way into your path again. Sometimes through a dream. Sometimes through a face that looks too similar. Sometimes through the sudden weight in your chest when you can't explain why you feel what you feel. That's how, time is still keeping them somewhere. Quietly, secretly. People say time heals. Maybe it does. But healing isn't forgetting. Healing is remembering without bleeding. It's learning how to look at the same memory without falling apart. It's knowing the person still exists somewhere, even if they're not in your world anymore. Because if time truly erased people, why do we still talk about them, think about them, dream about them? Why do we still feel their presence in moments when no one's around? You see, when someone touches your life deeply, they carve something into you, a mark that time can't sand away. You might build new layers over it, new people, new memories, new versions of yourself, but underneath, that mark stays. And sometimes, when the right light hits, you can still see it shining through. That's not weakness. That's proof you were alive, that you felt, that someone mattered enough to leave a trace. It's strange, isn't it, how time tries to clean the slate but always leaves fingerprints. You can change your city, your name, your life, but there are moments that still belong to someone else. Little fragments of memory that time couldn't quite hide. The way your hand twitches when you hear a familiar sound. The way you hesitate before saying a name. The way you smile at something no one else understands. That's the proof. That's the evidence that time hides, but never deletes. And maybe that's what makes time so powerful. It doesn't take people from us, it transforms them. It turns them into lessons, into echoes, into symbols. The person you once knew becomes a part of your voice, your choices, your fears, your strength. Even if they're gone, they're still shaping the way you live, the way you think, the way you survive. They become part of your foundation, buried deep, impossible to remove without breaking everything else. You might think 10 years is long enough to forget, long enough for the edges to fade. But the truth is, the more time passes, the clearer some things become, not because they're louder, but because the silence around them has grown. The noise of life dies down, and what's left, what always remains, is the echo of what mattered most. It's like a whisper that gets sharper in the quiet. You don't hear it every day, but when you do, it hits harder than ever. Sometimes, the The people we think we've lost are simply waiting for the right moment to reappear, not physically, but in thought, in memory, in meaning. Maybe they resurface when you need them most, when you're at a crossroads, when the world feels unfamiliar. They come back, not as they were, but as reminders of what you once survived, what you once loved, what you once hoped for. Time doesn't erase people because deep down, you never wanted it to. You wanted relief, not erasure. You wanted peace, not emptiness. So they stay, hidden beneath the rhythm of your days, in the laughter that sounds too familiar, in the dreams you can't quite explain, in the choices you make without realizing why. Time keeps them there, tucked away, safe but reachable, because maybe somewhere inside you, part of you is still searching too. And that's the trick time plays. It hides people long enough for you to think they're gone, then lets you find them again just to remind you how little control you ever really had. Obsession is a strange kind of fire. It doesn't burn bright all at once. It lingers, slow and quiet, like smoke that refuses to fade. Someone has been searching for you for 10 years, and with every year that passed, that fire didn't die. It grew colder, sharper, more dangerous. Because when you can't find what you're looking for, when every lead slips through your fingers, something inside you begins to change. You stop chasing a person. You start chasing the idea of them. That's when obsession stops being a choice. It becomes survival. It starts innocently enough. Hope, determination, a promise made in silence. They tell themselves it's about love or loyalty or unfinished business. But the truth? The truth is that obsession is a kind of madness dressed up as devotion. It feels righteous at first. It feels pure, but underneath it's hunger, a kind of ache that feeds on itself when it doesn't get what it wants. The longer it's starved, the stronger it becomes. Every day that passes without finding you adds another layer to that hunger. They wake up thinking about you, go to sleep thinking about you, eat, work, breathe with your absence sitting somewhere in the corner of their mind. It starts to warp their sense of time. 10 years begins to feel like one long, sleepless night. Every day is just another attempt to end it, to finally see your face, to confirm that the ghost they've been chasing is real. But the funny thing about ghosts, they only exist when you look for them. Obsession doesn't shout, it whispers. It makes itself sound reasonable. Asterisk. One more call, one more lead, one more city. Asterisk. It convinces you that this time you're close. This time you'll get it right. And then nothing. Just another dead end. Another name that didn't match. Another moment of silence where you realize you've built your world around a shadow. But by then, it's too late. You can't stop. You can't turn around. Because to stop searching means to admit it was all for nothing. And no one wants to face that. 10 years of looking for something or someone changes what you believe in. You stop believing in luck, in destiny, in help. You start believing in patterns, coincidences, signs that only make sense to you. The world becomes a puzzle, and every piece looks like it might fit, if only you twist it hard enough. You start to see connections that aren't there. You start to feel watched, even when no one's around. You lose sleep. You lose track of why you even started. But you keep going, because the thought of quitting feels worse than the pain of continuing. You start to forget their face. Isn't that the cruel part? You've been searching for someone so long that you can't even picture them clearly anymore. The details fade, and you fill in the blanks with imagination, memory, fragments. You build them again, piece by piece, until the version you're chasing isn't real at all. It's a creation, a reflection of what you needed them to be. And that's the trick. Obsession plays. It makes you fall in love with the image instead of the person. They say obsession blinds you, but it doesn't. It sharpens your vision. You start noticing everything, the smallest gestures, the tiniest signs, the things most people would ignore. You become aware of every possibility, every hidden path. But what you don't realize is that while you're watching the world so closely, the world stops watching you. You disappear. You fade into your own search until you become a ghost too, haunting the very thing you're trying to find. Obsession rewrites your priorities. You stop caring about comfort, about time, about reason. Friends drift away. Work slips through your fingers. Sleep becomes optional. Food becomes an afterthought. You convince yourself it's all temporary, that once you find them, once this ends, you'll go back to normal. But there is no normal waiting at the end, because the person you were when you started doesn't exist anymore. The hunt changes you, molds you, reshapes every part of who you thought you were. People will tell you to move on, to let go. They'll call it unhealthy, foolish, pathetic. But they don't understand the kind of emptiness that keeps a person searching that long. They don't understand what it means to wake up every day with a name that won't leave your head. It's not about logic. It's not even about the person anymore. It's about the time's need. Asterisk, the need to prove you weren't wrong. The need to make the pain mean something. Because if it doesn't, then what was the point of all those years? The longer the search continues, the more reality bends. You start to think maybe the world doesn't want you to find them. Maybe something bigger is at play, fate, punishment, karma. You start to see meaning in everything, from a random number on a wall to a dream that feels too real. You talk to yourself. You answer back. You tell yourself this is destiny. That's how obsession feeds. It gives you something to believe in when everything else stops making sense. 10 years is enough time to lose everything and still keep going. That's what obsession does. It steals your peace, your clarity, your time. But it gives you one thing in return: purpose. Twisted, fragile, obsessive purpose. You start to believe the search itself is what keeps you alive. Because if you stop, if you breathe, if you sit still too long, you'll have to face the truth that maybe they're gone. Maybe they never wanted to be found. Maybe you've been searching for something that only existed in your mind. And that truth is the one thing you can't survive. So you keep walking, keep following shadows, keep convincing yourself that the next turn, the next street, the next clue will be the one. Because obsession doesn't end, it just changes shape. It starts as love, turns into pain, hardens into purpose. And by the time you realize what it's become, it's already too late. The fire isn't outside anymore, it's in you. And you can't tell whether it's keeping you alive or burning you from the inside out. You've changed, but the memory they're chasing hasn't. That's the problem with people who live in the past. They freeze you in time. They hold on to a version of you that no longer exists, and they build their whole reality around it. Someone out there has been searching for you for 10 years, but the you they're searching for is gone. They're chasing a photograph that's faded, a voice that doesn't sound the same anymore, a heartbeat that learned a different rhythm. They don't see the scars you've collected, the storms you've survived, the fire you've walked through to become who you are now. They're looking for the ghost of a person who died the day you decided to change. People love to remember you as they want to, not as you are. It's easier that way. The old version of you can't argue. It can't disappoint them. It can't outgrow their expectations. It just stays there, trapped in their mind, frozen, obedient, perfect. They can keep you there, untouched by time, while the real you keeps moving, breaking rules, rewriting your story. And that's what scares them, because when they finally find you, they'll realize they've been searching for a stranger. 10 years of searching builds an illusion. They think they know you better than anyone else. They think the connection never changed. But what they don't understand is that time doesn't stop for anyone. Life doesn't wait while someone is stuck remembering. Every second you've lived since they last saw you has rewritten the pages of your story. You've become sharper, colder, wiser, maybe even a little dangerous. You've learned to live without them, learned to walk through nights that would have broken the old you. But they can't see that. They're still looking for the version of you that needed them. The world has a cruel way of reshaping people. It takes everything soft and turns it hard. It takes the ones who trusted too easily and teaches them to question everything. Maybe that's what happened to you. Maybe the person they're searching for was naive, hopeful, full of light. And maybe the one standing here now learned that light attracts shadows. The searcher doesn't know that version of you anymore. They don't know what you had to lose to survive. They don't know what it cost you to become this quiet, this aware, this untouchable. When people hold on to the past too tightly, they forget that memories lie. They remember the warmth, but not the reason you left. They remember the laughter, but not the pain that came after. They edit the story until it fits their comfort. They turn you into a character that suits their guilt, their nostalgia, their fantasy. And then they spend years chasing that version, convinced it's still out there, waiting to be found. They don't realize they're chasing smoke, because the person they think you are doesn't exist anymore. The person they lost isn't lost at all, they evolved. You've seen things in these 10 years that they wouldn't believe. You've walked through silence that would have driven them mad. You've rebuilt yourself piece by piece, sometimes with shaking hands, sometimes with no plan at all. You've had to unlearn the softness they loved, because the world doesn't reward softness, it consumes it. You've had to build walls where there used to be open doors. And behind those walls you became someone new. Not better, not worse, just real. Someone who doesn't need to be found to feel whole. But for them, the past is still alive. In their mind, you're still the same. Still waiting, still untouched, still the unfinished story they can fix. They think finding you will be like turning a page and continuing where they left off. But when they finally do, they'll realize the book has changed languages. The story's been rewritten, and the character they loved doesn't speak the same anymore. And maybe that's what terrifies them, the idea that you moved on while they were still standing still. There's something unsettling about being remembered incorrectly. It's like someone holding a portrait of you that no longer looks right. The smile's wrong, the eyes are dull, the color's faded, but they still call it you. They still believe it's who you are. You want to tell them that picture belongs to another lifetime, but they wouldn't listen. They're too attached to the idea. People always fall in love with the version they create in their heads. They never know what to do when the real thing changes. And you have changed. Change doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in the small, quiet moments. The nights you stayed up questioning everything. The mornings you forced yourself to keep going when nothing made sense. The hours spent staring at walls, trying to make peace with the silence. Those moments reshape you. They strip away the layers that no longer fit and replace them with something rawer, something truer. And now, when they finally find you, they won't know what to do with that truth. Because the truth is, they're not ready for who you are now. They're ready for who you were. They want the voice that comforted them, the heart that forgave too easily, the eyes that saw them as more than they deserved. They're not ready for the version of you that learned boundaries, that learned silence, that learned to say no. They're not ready for the version that doesn't need saving, that doesn't believe in old promises, that doesn't chase ghosts anymore. You can almost feel it, can't you? The tension between who you were and who you've become. The distance between their memory and your reality. They've spent years chasing something that time already buried, and when they finally catch up, they'll realize what time always does. It doesn't erase people. It evolves them. You've outgrown the cage they built for you. You've learned how to live without needing to be found. And while they're still lost in the echo of your name, you're standing in a place they never knew existed, a place only change could take you. The past has this strange habit of sneaking up when you least expect it. You think it's buried, forgotten, sealed tight somewhere behind everything new you've built, but no, it waits, quietly, patiently. The past always finds a way to resurface, crawling through cracks you didn't even know were there. It doesn't care how much you've changed, how far you've run, or how strong you've become. It just waits for the right silence, the right song, the right moment, and then it breathes again. You can change your name, your city, your voice, even your reflection, but the past doesn't need directions to find you. It knows every corner of your mind, every scar under your skin. It remembers you better than you remember yourself. It's like a scent you can't wash off, faint, but unmistakable. You can pretend it's gone, pretend it doesn't matter. But all it takes is one memory, one voice, one face that looks too familiar, and suddenly it's all back again, sharper than ever. People think they escape their past by building new lives, new identities, new dreams. But what they don't understand is that the past doesn't chase, it follows. Slowly, quietly, step by step. It doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't demand your attention, it slips into it. You'll be laughing, living, thinking you've finally moved on, and then something as small as a shadow or a phrase brings it crashing down like it never left. The past doesn't age. It just waits for you to notice it again. Sometimes, it's not even about guilt or pain. Sometimes, it's about unfinished stories, the kind that never got their ending. The ones you walked away from before the last word was written. The past hates loose ends. It will twist, pull, and claw its way back, just to remind you that not everything was settled. That something or someone still lingers in the background, waiting for you to face it. You can ignore it for years, but it's there, breathing under every decision, shaping every choice, without you even realizing it. And when it finally surfaces, it doesn't knock politely. It breaks the door open. You feel it in your chest, first the weight, the familiarity, the chill of recognition. You tell yourself it's nothing, just a coincidence, but deep down, you know it's not. The past doesn't do coincidences. It's deliberate, surgical. It comes back exactly when it needs to. Not to destroy you, no, to remind you, to test if you've really changed or if you've just been pretending. The strangest part is how easily it blends into the present. You can't always tell where memory ends and reality begins. You start questioning yourself. Did that conversation really happen? Did they really say that? Was it ever resolved? You replay it over and over in your head. but the answers blur. The past doesn't come back to give you clarity, it comes back to confuse you, to see if you'll fall into the same pattern again, say the same words, make the same mistakes. And most people do, because the past knows your weaknesses better than you do. It remembers exactly what breaks you, what tempts you, what makes you hesitate. It's patient like that. It waits for the moment you drop your guard, and then it slips in wearing a familiar face. That's the trick. It never looks like a threat. It looks like comfort. It looks like nostalgia. It looks like something you've missed. And before you realize it, you're not just remembering, you're reliving. You try to fight it, but fighting something that's already inside you is impossible. You can't outrun your own history. You can only learn to look it in the eye. But most people don't. Most people pretend. They build walls, smile for the world, pretend the ghosts don't whisper at night. They keep moving forward, but the weight stays. The same patterns repeat, different faces, same choices. That's the past's quiet victory. It doesn't need to drag you backward. It just needs you to stay stuck in the same loop, disguised as progress. Sometimes, the past doesn't even come back as a person or a memory. Sometimes it's just a feeling, something you can't name, can't place. A heaviness that sits in your chest for no reason. You wake up with it, you walk with it, you pretend you're fine, but you feel that shadow following you everywhere. That's the echo. That's the reminder that something unresolved still lingers somewhere deep, waiting for you to finally face it. You can't kill the past. You can't bury it deep enough to stop it from moving. It's not a body, it's a heartbeat. It keeps going, whether you want it to or not. It hides in your words, in the way you look at people, in the way you react when certain names are mentioned. You think you're free, but you're not. The past is stitched into you. It's not behind you, it's beneath you, under your skin, shaping how you walk, how you think, how you breathe. But here's the part most people never admit. The past doesn't always come back to hurt you. Sometimes it comes back to see if you've grown, to see if you're ready to handle what broke you before. It tests you quietly, like an old teacher showing up after years just to see if you remember the lesson. Most people fail. They crumble, repeat, fall right back into the same rhythm. But just a few stand still, face it, and don't flinch. Because they understand that the past isn't an enemy. It's a mirror. And if you can look into it without fear, without denial, it loses its power. But that's the game, isn't it? The past doesn't come back to destroy you, it comes back to expose you, to show you whether all those years of pretending to move on actually meant something, whether the scars healed or just hardened, whether you've changed or whether you're still the same person, standing in the same place, pretending you're free when you're still chained to something that refuses to let go.